Good morning. Great to see so many of you joining us today for our webinar on Cloudutils Secure Radius as a Service. My name is Vanessa Cardwell. I'm Marketing Manager here at NetUtils, and I'm joined this morning by Malcolm Orakoya, our Senior Technical Consultant. So today's webinar will give you an overview of our Cloudutils Secure Radius solution. Cloudutils Secure Radius is a cloud service that provides a managed Radius AAA and an 802.1x access security solution, enabling you to securely authenticate and control network access for all your users and devices without the cost and complexity of an on-premise Radius deployment. So to get started, I'm just going to quickly take you through today's agenda. The presentation will last about 30 minutes, and we're going to invite you to answer questions at the end. So if you have any questions at any point during today's presentation, please submit those using the question tab at any stage. Those of you who are regular attendees to our webinars will know that we like to use polls to make the webinars a bit more interactive. So we are going to be inviting you to answer a number of poll questions this morning, and those are going to be presented to you at different stages throughout the presentation. So we are going to share the results of those, so we really encourage you to participate in those polls if you can. So I'd like to now ask Malcolm to join me in further exploring the benefits of our Cloudutils Radius as a Service offering.
Morning, everyone. First of all, we just wanted to take a moment to look at this slide, basically about Radius, and talk about what a Radius is. Now, Radius stands for Remote Authentication Dial-in User Service, and is defined as a networking protocol that provides centralized authentication, authorization, accounting, management for computers to connect and use a network resource. Now, typically when Radius was initially used, it was used for remote access. So essentially, it served the function of authenticating users and devices by granting them access to a network, and then further authorizing those users or devices for access to certain resources on that network, and then finally providing accountability for usage of those resources by keeping logs of activity. Now, as the protocol has been used more and more over the years, and it's a very popular protocol now, it's moved from just a remote dial-in protocol to more of an identity management platform that provides a centralized authentication to a variety of services and resources. So, for example, people like telecoms carriers use Radius authentication a lot for authenticating users onto various resources within their network. So just remote access utilization has moved on now to more of a single centralized authentication platform that uses things like Wi-Fi to authenticate. You have VPN access, remote access servers, and network access servers. Web applications is a very big one over the last few years, where we have a lot of web-based applications and apps that are used for corporate resources, and authentication can be done via smartphones, tablets, and so on and so forth, and other things like device management. So just wanted to give an overview there of how the Radius protocol has moved on from its original inception.
Okay, thank you for giving us that introduction, Malcolm. I think now would be a good time to launch our first poll question. So that should appear on your screen shortly, and if you could take a second to answer that would be great. You should see that now. Roughly how many users are authenticated via Radius server within your organization? So you'll see the options there, 0 to 100, 100 to 1,000, or 1,000 plus, and not applicable unknown as well. So just seeing the results of that coming in now. So just give it a couple more seconds. Okay. Thank you for that, and we'll just launch the results of that so you can get an overview of everybody's results. You should see the results on your screen now, and you can see a bit of a mixed bag with the majority of you, however, authenticating over 1,000 users. So thank you very much for contributing to that poll. So moving on to the next slide now, why Radius as a service? So I quickly wanted to touch on here, what are the benefits of our Cloudutils Secure Radius solution? So we've listed a number of them on the slide there. Rather than go through all of them, I'm just going to pick out a couple of those features for you. So first of all, reduce or eliminate CapEx completely. So our Cloudutils Secure Radius enables you to completely negate the large costs and overheads associated with the deployment and ongoing maintenance of Radius servers, AAA software, redundancy systems, and two-factor authentication hard tokens. In addition, you only pay for the service that you use, giving you maximum flexibility and the means to scale up or down. And with no complex on-site equipment requirements, your costs are predictable and manageable. Another one of interest on the slide there, automatic updates and availability of future features. So our platform will always be up to date, ensuring that you aren't left paying for expensive system upgrades. And as we add more features, you'll have the option to add them without the need to purchase new hardware or specialist equipment. Again, we offer a free 24/7 help desk, so we provide organizations with 24/7 help desk support as part of the subscription. So that just gives you a little overview of some of the benefits of our solution.
Okay, so as Vanessa's mentioned, the key benefits of our solution enable you to remove the management burden of implementing and maintaining Radius servers. This obviously includes reducing your costs and overheads of managing the internal Radius servers. Obviously costs from hardware, software, maintenance, support, and also the expertise required to get the right individuals trained up to provide that continual service to keep that platform up. All that stuff can be removed by utilizing the Cloudutils Secure Radius Managed Service Platform. In addition to that, we deliver a full customer administration portal for administering your devices and users. So even though you're moving your platform to a managed service, you're not losing functionality because we provide you with a web-based admin portal that gives you control over administering your users and devices. In addition, as you would expect with Radius, we provide reliable AAA authentication, authorization, and accounting, so allowing you to use the protocol for what it was built for and for what it's moved onto, so integrating with different types of directory systems, user directory systems, allowing authorization to various types of resources, and obviously providing the logs of activity and accountability once people access your resources. Also, we support a variety of authentication protocols, as you'd expect. The standard stuff listed down there, MS-CHAP, 802.1x, and various methods of authentication for 802.1x, including TTLS. And finally, we are FISMA, PCI, and FIPS compliant. For those organizations that have that requirement, the Cloudutils Secure Radius platform provides that for you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Malcolm. So now we're going to launch our second poll question. So if you could take a look at that, should be on your screen now. What kind of access do you authenticate with Radius? And you can see the options listed there. So if you could let us know, Wi-Fi, VPN, 802.1x enabled switches, DSL. So I can see those results coming in now. I'll just give that a couple more seconds and launch the results of that. Thank you for everyone who voted. You should see the results now. So you can see in the snapshot there, again, a mixed bag across the board of the kind of access that people are authenticating. So thank you very much for answering that. Moving on, Malcolm's now going to give us a view, an overview of the actual solution itself.
Right, so moving on to the dashboard slide. When you have an account with the Cloudutils Secure Radius, you will have an administration portal, basically like this, where you'll access with your admin credentials that we provide to you. The dashboard on the right-hand pane shows you a general overview of your different resources, administrators, different groups, authentication groups, and so on and so forth. This is about 3/4 of the screen. Just slightly below where you see auth log, there's a graph there, a line graph, that shows you authentication, successful and unsuccessful authentication logs over a period of time, days, weeks, months, years. So that's a general snapshot there. On the navigation pane on the right-hand side there, we have a few key sections. So user groups, where you have external user groups, and user groups is essentially where you can provision either local users and assign those users to groups, and then those groups are then allowed access to your Radius server, or external users, which basically are propagated from an external user group connection. Now, an external user group connection we'll talk about in further detail later on, but it's essentially linking to external databases outside of our database. You also have guest section there where you can provision temporary accounts for guests that need to authenticate to a particular service or platform. And you have other control features. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in the next slides, such as devices and network access controls. But more importantly, Radius here is where you configure your virtual Radius server within our platform, and you can have several virtual Radius servers for different services. So as the poll question showed, a lot of you are using Radius for VPN, Wi-Fi, and 802.1x, so you can have different virtual Radius servers set up there. And I'll discuss in the next slides the virtual Radius server and the different bits that you get with it. So we've divided this into a connection and a control section. So those of you that are familiar with Radius will know that in order to connect to a Radius server, you basically need a Radius IP address, authentication port, accounting port, and a shared secret. So the general tab, once you configure a virtual Radius server, in the example on the right hand side there, we've just called a test one AD server. You will get those details that you need to connect, so shared secret, ports, and IP address. Now the other tabs at the top, starting from authentication protocol, user groups, and all the others which I've listed at the bottom, device groups, external user groups, and so on and so forth, are the control features. So basically those tabs allow you to control who actually is allowed to authenticate to that particular virtual Radius server. So we'll take them one at a time. The authentication protocol, depending on the service that you're providing, whether it's Wi-Fi, 802.1x, VPN, or whatever, basically determines what type of protocol you have available for that particular Radius server. The user groups and device groups, as I mentioned previously, is being able to add local users and local devices onto the system, and then adding those devices or users into a user group or device group and allowing that group to authenticate to your virtual Radius server. Devices can be added via things like MAC address or an attribute that a device sends out in its Radius request. Obviously, depending on the device, you might have to look at the request packet to see what information is sent. A very important one here is the external user groups. External user groups, as I mentioned before, allows you to integrate with external databases outside of the local database on our system. This includes things like Active Directory, LDAP, and a bunch of other systems, which I'll discuss further in the slides to come. Source IPs is basically a way of restricting access to your virtual Radius server, authentication to your virtual Radius server. If you know the users or services or devices that are going to be accessing that server and you want to lock down, so just an added level of security, the devices or users that can authenticate to that server, you can add your source IP addresses and only those addresses can authenticate. And I've covered guest users already, so just a way of creating temporary users to access a particular resource, whatever resource you've set up the virtual Radius server for. And the same applies for the access cards as well. Now, those of you that are familiar with Radius know that the Radius protocol has a bunch of attributes, and by default, these attributes on the RFC are available with our Cloudutils secure Radius platform. So even though this is a managed service offering and a virtual Radius server, so to speak, you don't lose any of the functionality that you will get from an internally hosted platform. Every single attribute that you would normally get under the RFC is available on our system. In addition to that, we have vendor-specific attributes from vendor manufacturers and hardware manufacturers that support certain specific attributes for the equipment, also available on there. So there's probably where you have the most flexibility with what attribute you want to authenticate with. Right, talking about integration, I've mentioned that obviously Radius has been around for a while. Some people use it, some people don't, some people have not heard of it before, but generally speaking, most devices or most platforms actually support Radius, and for those of you that are not even sure if your system supports it, you'll be surprised if you have a look under your authentication section of your device, you'll probably spot it there. So on the top left here we have a wireless controller. As you can see under the AAA section, it supports different authentication types, local user database, LDAP, and so on and so forth. And it also supports Radius. On the right hand side we have a typical firewall which supports Radius as well. And on the bottom we have an example of an SSL VPN device which also supports Radius. And you'll notice in all three of them you basically just need the general information I showed before, which is the IP address, shared secret, authentication, and accounting port as well. Right, okay, so I wanted to give an example of how you can use our system, and I picked VPN integration. This can be applicable with Wi-Fi or either 2.1x or any other service that you want to use. But using VPN as an example, I've got two different sections here. So the top section is basically using Radius with an existing VPN, is the SSL VPN connection. So typically with the SSL VPN connection, your users will log in with their username and password. Now, if you want to integrate Radius with this, you can have an additional authentication section, the one in the middle there, where we've got PIN plus GA code. Now the GA code is a Google Authenticator code, and Google Authenticator actually comes as standard, a two-factor authentication platform as standard with our Cloudutils Secure Radius service. So on that top example there, the user will set up their PIN, they'll download the app, which I'll show you on the next slide, and they'll be able to authenticate with their Windows password with those additional credentials. Now, for those of you that have an existing database, SQL or Active Directory or something that has a bunch of users or devices or whatever, and you want users to stick to the credential that they know, but you want to integrate two-factor authentication, so move away from single-factor authentication and use Google Authenticator, you can do something like I have at the bottom here, which is basically linking your Active Directory system to our Cloud Radius platform via an external user group and enabling Google Authenticator. And you can do Google Authenticator on user basis or on a group basis. I'll show you on the next slide. So as I mentioned, the Google Authenticator is an application that's available for smartphones. It's a free application that you can download on any iOS, Android, BlackBerry or Windows Phone device from their application stores. Once you download that and you enable Google Authenticator on the user or the virtual Radius server, you will get what you see at the bottom there, which is a QR code that you can scan with a QR scanner, usually free from one of the app stores. Or if you don't have a QR scanner, you can just type in the Google Authenticator key, an example at the bottom there. What you then get is what you see on the left-hand side. This is from an iOS device. And there are two examples, a key for a user, Malcolm Test 2, and a key for a virtual Radius server. Now in the top left-hand side you'll see a clock, which basically shows you that the code cycles through 60-second intervals and changes every 60 seconds. So typically what a user will do to add the Google Authenticator code, I'm not sure if you noticed in the other slide, is basically put in their PIN or password, followed by a comma, followed by the 6-digit code, all in the same field, in the same password field. Then therefore you moved from a single-factor authentication system to a multi-factor authentication system. Okay, so I've talked a lot about integration, and I wanted to just talk about our user database integration here. So we have various ways of integrating with different databases. A lot of organizations nowadays will already have some sort of database structure. So we start from the local user data store, where you can create local users. For maybe small list of users you can do this, or for guest users you can do this. But for users that have things like Active Directory or SQL databases and stuff, we obviously have integration with a user's existing databases to enable them to authorize access via Radius using those databases, so Active Directory, LDAP, SQL databases, and many more, which we'll talk about in the next few slides. And then finally, we have integration with our cloud user stores. So obviously, cloud is now a big thing, and Google Apps is widely used nowadays. And our Radius platform will allow your Radius credentials to pass through Google Apps, thereby basically allowing your users to log in with their Google credentials. User experience is keeping that the same for the users as well. And of course, you can integrate the Google Authenticator with this as well. Right, so external user groups and the different type of database server types that we support. You see on the left-hand side there just an example of creating an external user group connection and the different databases that we support, from LDAP, Active Directory, Sybase, MySQL, Google Apps, and many more. Quite a long list. It pretty much covers most of the main user and device directory databases that are being used nowadays in enterprise and service providers and carriers and so on and so forth. So it allows you to a quite flexible way of integrating with your existing directory system. And on the right-hand side, we just wanted to give an example of how you would go about integrating, for example, Active Directory, which is one of the biggest and most used directory systems. It's very straightforward. What you would do is you'd connect to your external public-facing IP address. So under the host name there, you'd have an external IP address such as 80.1. A bunch of other stuff. 2 of the octets are cleared out there, and basically open up 2 ports. So this is a connection on your firewall that you open 445, which is Microsoft Directory Services port, and LDAP-S, secure LDAP port, which is 636. So just 2 ports from our IP address, or our cloud service IP address, to your external facing perimeter IP address, and your domain name as well in the details. And we'll do a test connection once you set that up, and we'll be able to validate that we can actually get through to your Active Directory. If we can get through to your Active Directory, on the external user section of our platform, you will have all your users propagated in there, and then you can add Google Authenticator per user, or if you want, like I mentioned before, you can add it on the entire virtual Radius server. Again, finally, we just wanted to highlight some of the advanced Radius functionality that we provide. So the first one will be IP address management, where we provide flexible IP address management capabilities, allowing you to include stuff like static IP address assignment and dynamic IP address assignment from a pool of addresses. It's actually an IP pool section on the dashboard. In addition, we have system login and reporting. Obviously, we have a back-end database system that keeps track of everything, so we can provide administrative level reports that documents all your network login activity, and we also support exporting those logs to CSV, and also integrating with other external reporting and billing applications. So if you want to combine the activity from your authentication request and culminate all that into one platform, we can support that as well. Also on this screen, just wanted to quickly mention something that Vanessa mentioned earlier in the presentation, features being added in the future. We're working on various extra features to the Radius platform in line with things like authentication, the cloud, and web authentication, and so on and so forth. And once those features are added, you'll have them available to you as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Martin, for taking us through that Artificial Secure Radius offering. And before we move on to questions, we'd like to invite you now to answer our 3rd and final poll question today. So we're just going to launch that for you now. Straightforward one here for you. Would you consider using Radius as a service, choosing Radius as a service? Yes or no? Okay, I'm just seeing the results of that coming in now, so thank you for that. Let's give that a second. Okay, Thank you very much indeed for contributing to the poll. It's great to have your feedback on that. We're just going to move on to questions now. So if you have a question for Malcolm on anything that's been presented today, please use the question tab to submit that now, and we will endeavour to work through your questions before we finish the webinar. So I'll just give that a few seconds to get all those questions through. Okay, so here's a straightforward one to kickstart us, Malcolm. How is your solution costed?
Okay, the Cloudutils Secure Radius is costed on a per user per month basis, normally based on a minimum 12-month subscription. It's obviously on a sliding scale, so I think we start from a minimum of 10 user subscription, but the more users you subscribe, then normally the cheaper it gets. So it's sort of economies of scale, but it's a per user per month subscription basis.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And we'll just take one more before we close today. I already have a token-based two-factor authentication solution. Can I use your Cloudutils Secure Radius service to replace it?
Yes is the answer to that. A lot of people already have token-based two-factor authentication, but obviously as they've used it over a period of time, they start becoming aware of the drawbacks and administrative overhead of having such systems, so they're moving more towards maybe SMS-based or application-based two-factor authentication. So as I showed in one of the examples, you can integrate Google Authenticator, which is obviously an app-based two-factor authentication method available on a smartphone, with your existing service and your existing user or device directory. So your users will basically just be adding the 6-digit code with their existing credentials, and you can just use or add that functionality through the Cloudutils Secure Radius platform. Okay,
that's great. Thank you very much indeed, Malcolm, and thank you very much to all of you for joining us today. If you would like any more information about Cloudutils Secure Radius, then please do get in touch with us on the details that you see there. We're running another webinar on our Cloudutils app performance solution next Wednesday, the 27th of February at 11 AM. So do please join us for that if you can, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you.